I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. What happens when a woman who gave everything is treated like nothing? Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's dignity. My husband, Paul, died on a Tuesday. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to death. So fast I barely had time to understand I was losing him. 42 years of marriage ended in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and grief. His last words to me weren't profound or poetic. He simply squeezed my hand and said, "Take care of yourself, Brenda. Please." As if he knew I'd spend the rest of my life taking care of everyone but myself. I'm Brenda Cook, 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, and until recently, I lived in the suburban home where Paul and I raised our only son, Brian. It was a modest 3-bedroom with a mosaic patio where we celebrated every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone. After Paul died, the silence in that house became unbearable. Every corner screamed his absence. The empty chair at the breakfast table, the untouched pillow on his side of the bed, the coffee mug that I couldn't bring myself to move from where he left it. 2 weeks after the funeral, Brian came to visit me. He had his wife Stephanie on his arm and that familiar smile, the one he'd been using since he was 8 when he wanted something but didn't want to ask directly. "Mom," he said as we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd taught him to write his name 35 years earlier. "Stephanie and I have been looking for a house, something bigger for the kids, but the prices are just—" He shook his head, letting the sentence trail off. Stephanie nodded, stirring her tea with perfectly manicured nails. Coral pink that day, I remember thinking how they matched her designer blouse. "The down payment for the house we want is $68,000, she said. "We've been saving for a year, but we only have half." I understood immediately what they weren't saying. The question hung in the air between us. "How much do you need?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Brian looked down at his hands, his father's hands. "If you sold this house, Mom, you could come live with us. You wouldn't be alone. The kids adore you." His voice brightened. "It's a win-win." "It would be perfect," Stephanie added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You help with the kids. We take care of you, like a real family should." That word, family, it pulled at something deep inside me. I signed the sale papers 3 weeks later. My suburban home with its high ceilings and 4 decades of memories sold for $120,000. I gave Brian $68,000 for the down payment and put the remaining $52,000 in a savings account. My safety net, I thought. What I didn't do, and this weighs on me to this day, was insist on putting my name on the deed of the new house. The notary, Marcus Winters, an old family friend, actually suggested it. "Mrs. Cook," he said, adjusting his reading glasses, "since you're contributing the entire down payment, it would be prudent to include your name on the deed, for your protection in case anything unexpected happens." Brian nodded quickly. "That's fine. The house is for all of us. Why complicate things with extra paperwork? We can always add Mom's name later." I should have listened to Marcus, but I was grieving, lonely, and desperate to remain connected to the only family I had left. So I smiled and said, "I trust my son." The new house was in Oak Ridge Heights, a gated community with a security booth at the entrance. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a 2-car garage. Modern, sleek, cold. Nothing like the warm, lived-in home I'd left behind. But it had a small garden where I could plant roses, and a park nearby where I could take my grandchildren, Tyler and Emma, to play. It would become home, I told myself. Eventually. The first few weeks were an adjustment, but manageable. I would wake up at 5:30 each morning, old habits from 4 decades of teaching, and make coffee the way Brian liked it. Strong with a hint of cinnamon, I'd prepare breakfast, eggs and bacon, fruit parfaits for the kids, avocado toast for Stephanie. I'd help Tyler, 9 years old and serious like his grandfather, with his backpack and homework. I'd brush Emma's hair, this sweet 6-year-old who looked so much like Brian at that age it sometimes took my breath away. Stephanie would dash out at 7:30, always impeccable in her business suits and expensive perfume. She worked as an operations manager at a tech company, a job that paid well but required long hours. Brian would leave half an hour later, sometimes kissing my forehead, sometimes just grabbing his travel mug with a quick "Thanks, Mom," and I would stay behind, clearing plates, doing laundry, watering plants, and telling myself that this arrangement made sense, that I was needed here, that this was what family meant. I didn't notice the cracks appearing until they were too wide to ignore. It started with small things. Stephanie checking the counters after I cleaned them, a finger run along a shelf looking for dust, opening the refrigerator and rearranging items I'd already organized. "Mother-in-law," she said one morning, 3 months after I moved in. Never Brenda, never Mom, always mother-in-law, as if it were my name. "The mirrors have spots. Could you be more careful with the glass cleaner?" I nodded and re-cleaned the mirrors, even though I couldn't see any spots. Another day. "Mother-in-law, Tyler's shirts aren't ironed properly. See these wrinkles?" She held up a perfectly acceptable shirt. "And you've used too much detergent again. These brand-name products are expensive." Each criticism was delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. Each one a small paper cut on my sense of self-worth. The children, bless them, loved having me there. Tyler would sit with me in the evenings while I helped with his math homework. Emma would fall asleep on my lap while I read her stories. But whenever Stephanie saw us together, her face would harden almost imperceptibly. The tipping point came one evening when Emma, cuddled against me on the couch, looked up and said loudly, "Grandma, I love you more than Mommy." The room went silent. Stephanie froze by the doorway, a glass of wine halfway to her lips. Tyler stopped playing his video game. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. "That's silly, sweetheart," I said quickly, my heart racing. "You love us both, just in different ways." But the damage was done. That night I heard shouting from Brian and Stephanie's bedroom. "Your mother is undermining me with my own children." Stephanie's voice, sharp and clear even through the closed door. "She's not doing it on purpose, Steph." Brian, always the peacemaker. "Emma is just attached to her. Too attached. She gives them everything they ask for, fills their heads with nonsense, makes me look like the bad guy. She's my mom, Stephanie. She just lost Dad. Cut her some slack." A pause. Then Stephanie's voice, lower but somehow more cutting. "Your mom or the maid who doesn't pay rent?" I waited for Brian to defend me, to say something, anything. But there was only silence, followed by the sound of a door closing. And that's when I knew I had crossed an invisible line. I was no longer the helpful mother-in-law. I was the burden they endured. The following week, on the advice of my old friend Helen Martinez, I started keeping track of my financial contributions to the household. A small notebook hidden in my sewing kit became my record of every dollar spent. The mortgage was $1,400 a month. Brian paid $480, all he could afford on his realtor's salary, he said. The remaining $920 came from my monthly pension of $1,600, leaving me just $680 for all my personal expenses. But it wasn't just the mortgage. New refrigerator, $1,890. Washer and dryer, $2,850. Complete living room set because Stephanie said the one from their apartment looked dated, $3,200. All paid from my savings. All noted meticulously in my little book. "You're a smart woman, Brenda," Helen told me over coffee at her apartment downtown. "Document everything, just in case." "In case of what?" I asked, though deep down I was beginning to understand. Helen, widowed 5 years before me, simply patted my hand. In case life teaches you the same lesson it taught me, family isn't always who you think it is. A year passed. The humiliations became more subtle, but more constant. Stephanie would organize family dinners and forget to tell me until the last minute. Her friends would come over for wine nights, and she'd introduce me as Brian's mom who helps with the house. Never as family. I became invisible, a ghost moving through the rooms of a house I helped pay for but didn't belong in. Christmas that year was particularly painful. When they gathered for the family photo in front of the tree, Stephanie handed me the camera. "You have a steadier hand, mother-in-law," she said with that same cold smile. I stood behind the camera, watching through the viewfinder as my family posed without me. That photo ended up framed on the mantel. I didn't appear in a single photograph displayed in the house. It was as if I didn't exist. One afternoon, while cleaning, I accidentally overheard Stephanie on the phone with her sister. "No, seriously," she laughed, not realizing I was just around the corner. "It's like having a free maid. She gets up early, cooks, cleans, takes care of the kids. And the best part? I don't have to pay her or give her days off because she's family." Her sister said something I couldn't hear. "Brian feels guilty sometimes," Stephanie continued, lowering her voice slightly. "But I tell him she's better off here than alone in a nursing home or something." That night, I bought a small digital voice recorder from an electronics store downtown. $45 for my dwindling personal budget. The best investment I would make. Because Stephanie was right about one thing. When you become invisible, people talk in front of you as if you don't exist. They forget you have ears to hear, a heart to break, and a mind that's still sharp enough to understand exactly what's happening. Over the next 6 months, I recorded 17 conversations. Stephanie with her friends in the living room. My mother-in-law does everything in the house so I can focus on my career. That's why I got this promotion. Stephanie with Brian in their bedroom while I dusted the hallway. Your mom is getting really annoying. She wants to have an opinion on everything. How I raise my kids, what I buy at the supermarket. And the most damning, from 3 months ago, Stephanie on the phone again. "When she dies, your dad left a good pension. She served her purpose. Maybe it's time for her to find her own space, a small apartment or a nice retirement home." Brian's response, which I heard through the door, "I'll think about it." 4 words that shattered what was left of my heart. I wasn't just a ghost in this house. I was a ghost with an expiration date. But what they didn't know, what no one at that perfectly polished dining table could imagine, was that this ghost had been preparing. The recorder, the notebook full of financial records, the original deed to the house that Marcus had insisted I keep just in case, tucked away in my sewing kit beneath spools of thread and packets of needles. And something else. Something no one suspected because no one bothered to ask. I never signed over the deed to the house. It was still in my name. Only my name. When we bought the house, Marcus explained that since I put down the full down payment, it was safest to put everything in my name first. "You can do the transfer whenever you want later, Mrs. Cook," he'd said. "But this way, you're protected." Brian agreed at the time. "It's better this way, Mom. Safer for you." And then we never did the transfer. He'd ask about it occasionally in the first few months. "We should go to the notary, Mom, to change the deeds." But there was always something more urgent. Always a reason to delay, until he stopped asking. And I, consciously or unconsciously, never reminded him. Some part of me, the part that had survived 42 years of marriage, that had raised a son while Paul worked 12-hour shifts, that had taught elementary school children for 30 years. That part knew I needed protection. That part saved me. It all came to a head on a Thursday in March. I was washing the breakfast dishes when Stephanie came downstairs, practically floating. She was wearing her pearl gray suit, the one she saved for important meetings, and a smile that lit up her whole face. "I got it!" she shouted as Brian followed her down, tying his tie. "What happened, Mommy?" Emma asked from the table, her mouth full of pancakes. "Your mommy is the new regional operations manager," Stephanie announced, twirling around. "The youngest in the company's history." Brian hugged her and lifted her off the ground. "I knew you'd get it. I knew that position was yours." I was by the stove, flipping the last pancake. "Congratulations, Stephanie," I said sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. She barely glanced at me. "Thanks, mother-in-law," she replied, still in Brian's arms. "We have to celebrate," my son declared, "in a big way, like my wife deserves." "The Skyline Grill?" Stephanie suggested, her eyes sparkling. "The one with the view of the city I told you about?" "Whatever you want. Money is no object tonight." Tyler raised his hand like he was in school. "Am I going too?" "Of course, champ." Brian ruffled his hair. "The whole family." My heart skipped a beat. The whole family. That included me, right? I put the pancakes on the table and wiped my hands on my apron. "What time should I make the reservation for?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Stephanie looked at me as if she had just realized I was still there. "Reservation for what?" "The table. For the family dinner." There was an awkward silence. Brian cleared his throat. Stephanie exchanged a look with him, one of those looks that speak volumes without a word. "Oh no, mother-in-law," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's an intimate dinner, you know, just us, the kids, my mom who's coming from upstate. Direct family." Those words stabbed my chest like shards of glass. "I understand," I said, and went back to the stove, even though there was nothing left to cook. "Besides," Stephanie continued, spreading butter on her toast, "someone has to stay with the house, right? We can't just leave it empty. And you cook so well. I'm sure you'll make yourself something delicious." Brian said nothing. My son, the boy I'd raised, whom I'd nursed through chickenpox and heartbreaks and college rejections, just stared silently at his plate of eggs. They all left at 11 in the morning. Stephanie changed her outfit 3 times. The kids were excited in their Sunday best. Brian gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, so automatic he didn't even look me in the eye. "Don't wait up for us, Mom. We're going to be late." And they left. The house fell silent, a silence so heavy I could barely breathe. I walked through the living room with its expensive furniture that I'd paid for, through the dining room with its glass table that I cleaned every day, through the kitchen where I spent hours preparing meals they barely thanked me for. Everything was spotless, everything was in order, and I was completely alone. I made myself some instant soup, the kind they sell in packs of 3 for $2. I sat at the kitchen table, not in the dining room. The help doesn't eat in the dining room. At 7 in the evening, I opened Instagram. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to confirm what I already knew. Maybe I'm a masochist. There they were. The first photo, Stephanie, radiant in her red dress, holding a glass of champagne. Thanks to everyone for joining me on this special day. The second photo, my grandchildren with huge plates of shrimp and French fries. Tyler had sauce on his chin. Emma was making a victory sign with her fingers. The third photo broke me. The whole table. I counted 9 people. Brian, Stephanie, the kids, Stephanie's mom, her sister, her brother-in-law, and 2 other people I didn't recognize. 9 people celebrating, laughing, toasting, and me eating instant soup in a kitchen I helped pay for. I looked at the comments. 184 in the first hour. "Congratulations, Queen." "You deserve it." What a beautiful family. No one asked about me. No one noticed someone was missing because I had been invisible for a long time. I closed the app, washed my bowl, dried the table. And then my phone vibrated. A text from Stephanie. Mother-in-law, remember to heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them. I read those words, and something inside me died. But at the same time, something else awakened. I opened the refrigerator. There they were. A half-eaten rotisserie chicken from yesterday, rice from Monday, vegetables I had bought and cooked. Leftovers. That's what I deserved, according to them. Their leftovers. Their contempt wrapped in polite words. I closed the refrigerator, took a deep breath, and wrote my reply. Okay. 2 letters, nothing more, but in those 2 letters was a decision that had been taking shape in my head for months. Since the first time Stephanie treated me like a maid. Since Brian stopped defending me. Since I understood I had given my entire life to a family that no longer saw me as part of it. I went up to my room, opened the closet, and took out the suitcase. The one Paul and I had used for our last trip to the coast together. It still had the hotel tag attached to the handle. I put it on the bed and started packing. But before folding the first blouse, I stopped. This couldn't just be a tantrum. It couldn't be a dramatic exit that would end with me begging to come back in a week. This had to be final. Calculated. Just. I walked to the back of the closet and moved the shoeboxes I never used. Behind them, wrapped in a plastic bag, was my old sewing box, the one my mother gave me when I got married. I opened it and took out what I had hidden there for months. Everything was in that hardcover, spiral-bound notebook. Every dollar I invested in this house since the day we moved in. Every receipt, every proof of payment. 3 years of my life documented in the shaky handwriting of a woman who sensed she might need it one day. I turned the pages slowly. August 2022, down payment on the house, $68,000. September 2022, new refrigerator, $1,890. Washer and dryer, $2,450. October 2022, living room set because Stephanie said the one they brought from their apartment was too old, $3,200. November 2022, repair of the burst pipe, $870. The list went on and on. A 55-inch TV for the living room, $2,200. New mattresses for the bedrooms, $3,800. The master bathroom remodel that Stephanie desperately wanted, $6,500. And then there were the monthly expenses, because Brian only paid $480 a month toward the mortgage. That's all he could afford on his salary, he said. But the actual mortgage was $1,400 a month. Who paid the other $920? I did, every month without fail for 3 years. From my widow's pension of $1,600 a month, I contributed $920 to maintain the house where I lived like a servant. I did a quick calculation on the last page of my notebook. Down payment and initial furniture, $84,930. Monthly mortgage contributions, 36 months, is $920. $33,120. Repairs, improvements, and extra expenses, $18,950. Total invested, $136,800. $136,800. Almost everything I received from the sale of my suburban house. Everything Paul and I built over 42 years of marriage. Invested in a house where they treated me worse than a stranger. But the most important thing, the thing that gave me real power, was hidden at the bottom of the sewing box. I reached in and pulled out a yellowed manila envelope. Inside were the original deeds to the house. I opened them with trembling hands. There it was, in the notary's handwriting, clear as day. Property located at 847 Oak Ridge Circle, Oak Ridge Heights. Owner, Brenda Ann Cook, widow of Paul James Cook. My name. Only my name. I put the deeds back in the envelope, but I didn't place it in the suitcase just yet. First, I took out my phone and dialed a number I had saved for months. "Hello?" A young professional voice answered. "Jessica, it's your Aunt Brenda." "Aunt Brenda?" My niece sounded surprised. "What a lovely surprise. How are you?" Jessica was my younger sister's daughter, a lawyer specializing in family law. 38 years old, 2 kids, and a recent divorce that had made her fierce in court. "I need your help," I said. "It's urgent. Can you see me early tomorrow?" There was a pause. "Aunt Brenda, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." "I'm perfect. For the first time in 3 years, I'm perfect. But I need your help with a legal matter about my house." "Your house? I thought you were living with Brian and Stephanie." "Exactly. That's why I'm calling." I heard Jessica grab a pen and paper. "Tell me everything." I explained the situation in 15 minutes. The down payment, the deeds, the payments, the humiliation, the text about the leftovers. When I finished, Jessica let out a low whistle. "Aunt Brenda, are you telling me that house is completely in your name and they don't know it?" "That's right." "And you have proof of everything you've invested? Every receipt, every transfer? Everything?" "Yes." "Oh my God." I heard Jessica typing on her computer. "Aunt Brenda, this is legal gold. You have a solid case, rock solid." "What do you want to do?" "Whatever I can." "Whatever the law allows." "You can evict them. You can charge them back rent. You can sell the house. Legally, they're your tenants without a lease. They have no rights to the property." I felt a smile spread across my face. Not a happy smile. A smile of justice. "I'll be at your office tomorrow at 8 in the morning. "I'll be waiting, Aunt Brenda. And bring all the papers. Deeds, receipts, proofs of payment. Everything." I hung up and took a deep breath. Then I dialed another number. "Hello?" A male voice answered, thick with sleep. "Mr. Winters, it's Brenda Cook. I'm sorry to call so late." "Mrs. Cook, what happened? Are you okay?" Marcus Winters had been our notary for 30 years. He handled Paul's will and the deeds for this house. "I need you to review some documents tomorrow about the house in Oak Ridge Heights." "Did something happen?" "Let's just say I'm going to assert my rights." I heard Marcus shift in his chair. "Are Brian and his wife giving you trouble?" "You could say that." "Oh, Mrs. Cook, I warned you not to transfer the house until you were sure." "I know, my friend, and you were right. That's why I'm calling. I need your advice." "My office, 10 o'clock tomorrow, and bring everything." "I'll be there." I hung up and dialed the last number. This one was the hardest. "Brenda?" My friend Helen answered. "What are you doing up at this hour?" Helen and I had known each other for 40 years. We were neighbors back in the suburbs. Our sons grew up together. She was widowed 2 years before me. "Helen, is the room you were going to rent still available? The one upstairs?" "Yes. Why?" "Can I move in tomorrow?" Silence. "What happened, my friend?" And then, for the first time all night, my voice broke. "I can't do it anymore, Helen. I can't keep being invisible in my own house." "You come tomorrow," Helen said in a firm voice. "Whenever you want. I'll be waiting." I hung up the phone. And then, yes, I allowed myself to cry. But I didn't cry from sadness. I cried from relief. Because after 3 years of humiliation, I was finally going to get my dignity back. And they, all of them toasting with expensive wine while I ate leftovers, were about to learn the hardest lesson of their lives. It was 10:15 at night. I still had time. According to their Instagram stories, they were on dessert, a chocolate raspberry tower that cost $34 a slice. I figured they'd be home after midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. I had 3 hours, maybe 4, if they kept toasting. I went back to my room and really started packing. But not all my clothes, just the essentials, what was truly mine. Because I had learned something important in these 3 years. They had gotten used to the idea that everything of mine was also theirs. The woven blanket my mother gave me, the silver rosary Paul bought me in Mexico, my wedding photos, the books I had collected for years, my Italian coffee maker I brought from my old house. Every object I put in the suitcase was a piece of my recovered identity. But there was something more important to pack. I opened my dresser drawer and took out the small digital recorder I had bought downtown 6 months ago. I connected the recorder to my old laptop and copied the files to a USB drive. File 1, October 15th, 2024. Stephanie's voice on the phone with her sister. No, seriously. It's like having a free maid. She gets up early, cooks, cleans, takes care of the kids. And the best part is, I don't have to pay her or give her days off because she's family. Her laugh. I remembered that laugh perfectly. File 2, November 23rd, 2024. A conversation between Stephanie and Brian in their bedroom. I was cleaning the bathroom outside. Your mom is getting really annoying, Brian. She wants to have an opinion on everything. On how I raise my kids, on what I buy at the supermarket. She's my mom, Stephanie. She just wants to help. Helping is getting in the way, and every time the kids listen to her more than me, my blood boils. I copied everything to the USB drive and saved another copy to my email, just in case. Then I took something else out of the drawer, my old phone, the one I used before Brian gave me a new one. So you can use WhatsApp more easily, Mom. What he didn't know was that I never threw the old one away. And on that phone I had taken pictures. Pictures of the receipts Stephanie threw in the trash. Screenshots of her social media posts where she bragged about the house, the furniture, the renovations. Always with hashtags like my house, had personal achievements. My house. My achievements. Never our house. Never thanks to family. I copied all the photos to the same USB drive. It was 10:45. Instagram showed they were still at the restaurant. Now they were having coffee and cognac. I still had time. I went downstairs silently. The house was dimly lit. Only the hallway light was on. I walked through the living room. I stopped in front of each piece of furniture I had bought. The 3-seater sofa, $3,200. The glass coffee table, $850. The wooden bookshelf where Stephanie put her decorative plants, $12,200, but I wasn't going to take any of it. It wasn't my style anyway. I wasn't going to empty the house like a thief in the night. I was only going to take what was indisputably mine, my clothes, my memories, my dignity, and the deeds. I went back upstairs and finished closing the suitcase. It was quite heavy, but I could manage. I sat on the edge of the bed and took out a sheet of paper and a pen. I had to leave them something. I couldn't just disappear without a word. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me beg or explain. I wrote in clear handwriting, Brian, for 3 years I lived in this house as an invisible maid. I cooked, cleaned, cared for your children, paid bills, and swallowed humiliations in silence. Tonight, while you celebrated Stephanie's promotion and sent me a text to heat up leftovers, I made a decision. I will no longer be the ghost of this family. You will find documents on your nightstand. Read them carefully. We will see each other soon with lawyers present. I have loved you my whole life, but love doesn't mean letting you walk all over me. Mom. I folded the letter and placed it on his pillow, on his side of the bed. Then I took out the manila envelope with the deeds. Inside, I placed a yellow sticky note. This house is in my name. It always was, and I have proof of every dollar I invested in it. $136,800 to be exact. See you at the notary's office. I left the envelope on Brian's nightstand, clearly visible. I checked my phone, 11:28 at night. The last Instagram story showed they were asking for the check. It was time to go. I carried the suitcase down carefully. My 68-year-old legs protested, but they held up. I paused at the front door and took one last look at this house I had helped build. At the floors I had mopped 1,000 times. At the walls I had painted when we moved in. At the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals that no one appreciated. I didn't feel sadness. I felt freedom. I locked the door. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't leave the key in the lock on the inside. I took it with me. After all, it was my house. I called an Uber from the corner. The driver, a man in his 50s, helped me with the suitcase. "Long trip, ma'am?" he asked as we pulled away. I looked out the window at the house receding in the darkness. "No," I replied. "It's a journey back to myself." As the car moved through the empty streets of Oak Ridge Heights, I imagined the scene to come. Brian and Stephanie, the kids all entering the house, their cheeks flushed with wine and laughter, turning on the lights, calling for me, finding silence, going upstairs, confused, opening my bedroom door, empty, entering their bedroom, seeing the envelope, reading the letter, and understanding everything. I smiled in the darkness of the car. Tonight, they would return laughing to a house they thought was theirs, and I would sleep peacefully for the first time in 3 years at my friend Helen's house, knowing that I had finally found my voice again. Tomorrow, the legal war would begin. But tonight was just for me to celebrate that the invisible maid had finally woken up, and she had teeth. I wasn't there when they arrived home that night, but Tyler told me everything 3 days later when he came looking for me at Helen's house, tears streaming down his little face. Let me reconstruct that night as my grandson described it to me, his voice breaking with every word. It was 1:23 in the morning when Brian's car pulled into the driveway of Oak Ridge Heights. The security guard waved them through with a friendly greeting. According to the guard, who later became an unexpected ally, they were laughing loudly with the music turned all the way up. Stephanie was leaning on Brian's shoulder. She had drunk 3 glasses of red wine, 2 of champagne, and a shot of tequila with which they made a final toast to her success. Brian wasn't entirely sober either. He'd had 2 double whiskeys and several beers. The children were asleep in the back seat, Tyler's head lolling against the window, Emma clutching her favorite stuffed unicorn. They parked the car. Stephanie almost tripped getting out, laughing at her unsteady balance in 4-inch heels. Brian caught her by the waist, playing around, kissing her neck. "Regional manager," he whispered. "My wife, the manager." "And you the husband of the year," she replied, hanging on his arm. They walked up the porch steps. Brian fumbled for the keys in his pocket, staggering slightly. "Shh," Stephanie said between giggles. "Don't wake up your mom." "Let her sleep," Brian replied. "She deserves it after taking care of the house all night." They opened the door. Everything was dark, just the upstairs hallway light on, as I always left it so they wouldn't trip coming in late. "Mom?" Brian called as he entered. His voice was slurred. Silence. Stephanie turned on the living room light, and then they saw it. The living room was different. Not empty, but different. The Persian rug I had brought from my old house was gone, the one my mother bought on a trip to New Mexico 50 years ago. The embroidered cushions on the sofa were gone, the ones I had made myself over months of evenings. The pictures on the walls were gone. My pictures, landscapes from the coast that Paul gave me on our anniversaries. "What?" Stephanie frowned. "Did your mom move things around?" Brian walked to the kitchen. He turned on the light. The Italian coffee maker was gone. The ceramic mugs I collected were gone too. The apron that always hung on the hook next to the fridge had disappeared. "Mom?" he called out louder. "Where are you?" They went upstairs. Tyler told me that's when the alcohol started to wear off. My bedroom door was ajar. Brian pushed it open. He turned on the light. The bed was made, perfectly made as I always left it, but empty. The closet was open, empty of my clothes. Only the hangers remained. The nightstand without my books, my glasses, my rosary. As if I had never existed in that room. "What the hell?" Stephanie muttered behind him. Brian ran to the bathroom. My toothbrush was gone. My face cream, my comb, my cheap rose-scented perfume. All gone. He went back to the bedroom, and that's when he saw it. Their bed. On his pillow, a folded letter. He grabbed it with trembling hands. He unfolded it. Stephanie read over his shoulder. Tyler told me his father's face changed as he read. From confusion to disbelief. From disbelief to horror. "What does it say?" Stephanie asked, her voice now sharp with anxiety. "Did she leave? Did your mom leave?" But Brian didn't answer. He had seen the manila envelope on his nightstand. He opened it with clumsy fingers. He took out the deeds to the house, and he read the name written there in official notary script. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." "What is it?" Stephanie snatched the papers from him. Her eyes scanned the document once, twice, and then she turned pale. This can't be real." "The house is in her name," Brian said in a hollow voice. "The whole house. It was always in her name." But you paid the down payment. You told me." "She paid the down payment. She sold her house. $68,000. I didn't have anything. It all came from her." Stephanie took the yellow sticky note that was attached to the deeds. $136,800 to be exact, she read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. $136,800, Brian repeated, disbelief coloring his voice. "Are you telling me your mom invested over $100,000 in this house, and we never did the transfer?" Stephanie's voice was rising with each word. "Oh my God, Stephanie. We never transferred the property." The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler told me he woke up to the shouting. He came downstairs, rubbing his eyes, and found his parents in the living room. His mom was shouting. His dad had his head in his hands. "This can't be happening," Stephanie paced back and forth like a caged animal. "We've lived here for 3 years. 3 years, this is my house." "It's her house," Brian said in a dead voice. "Legally, it was always her house. Then you demand that she give it to you. She's your mother. She has an obligation." "An obligation?" Brian looked up. His eyes were red. "Like the obligation we had to treat her with respect? To not exclude her from dinner tonight?" Stephanie was speechless. "We left her alone," Brian continued, his voice cracking. "In her own house. We left her eating leftovers while we spent $300 on wine." "Brian, you can't be serious. Your text," he cut her off. "That damn text about heating up the leftovers from the fridge." Stephanie's mouth fell open. She closed it. She turned even paler. It wasn't with bad intentions. It was just, what, a joke? Was humiliating her funny to you?" For the first time in 3 years, my son defended my honor. But it was too late. Tyler was crying on the stairs, listening to everything. Emma woke up and started calling for me. "Where's Grandma? I want my grandma." Brian dialed my number once, twice, 5, 10 times. I had silenced his contact. He sent texts. "Mom, please answer me. Mom, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Mom, we can fix this. Please, Mom, please don't do this." None of them got a reply because at that moment I was at Helen's house, drinking chamomile tea with honey, wrapped in a clean blanket that smelled of fabric softener, sleeping the deepest and most peaceful sleep I'd had in 3 years. Stephanie tried one last card that night. "Let's call a lawyer tomorrow. I'm sure we can contest those deeds. We've been living here for 3 years. That gives us rights. Good faith possession or something." Brian looked at her with a mixture of disgust and disappointment. "You still don't get it. She has everything documented. Every dollar, every receipt. And worse." He ran his hands over his face. "She's right. We treated her like trash. I let you treat her like trash." He stood up and walked to the kids' room. Tyler told me his dad hugged him that night and cried. He cried like Tyler hadn't seen him cry since Grandpa Paul died. "I ruined everything," he told his 9-year-old son. "I lost Grandma because I was an idiot." That night, no one slept well in the house they thought was theirs, the house that was always mine. And while they wandered through the rooms, empty of my things, trying to understand how everything fell apart in one night, I slept in peace. Because sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon, and sometimes disappearing is the only way to finally be seen. I woke up at 7 in the morning at Helen's house. Natural light streamed through the window. Birds were singing outside. The smell of fresh coffee wafted up from the kitchen. It had been 3 years since I'd woken up without a knot in my stomach. I stretched in bed. No one was waiting for me downstairs to demand breakfast. No one would check if I had cleaned the bathroom properly. No one would give me orders disguised as suggestions. I was free. My phone had 32 notifications, 23 missed calls from Brian, 15 WhatsApp messages, 4 from Stephanie, 2 from unknown numbers that were probably meddling relatives who had already heard about the scandal. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I opened Facebook, the social network I hardly ever used, filled with old contacts. Friends from my book club, neighbors from my old suburb, distant cousins, high school classmates I'd found years ago, 437 friends who barely saw my posts because I never posted anything. Until today, I typed with trembling fingers. After 3 years of caring for a family that made me invisible, I learned that self-love isn't selfishness. It's survival. I hit post and closed the app. I went down for breakfast. Helen was waiting for me with breakfast burritos, fresh fruit, and coffee with cinnamon. My favorite breakfast. "How did you sleep?" she asked, pouring me orange juice. "Like I haven't slept in years." "And what's next now?" she asked, cutting a piece of burrito. "Now comes the legal part." At 8 o'clock sharp, I was at Jessica's office. My niece greeted me with a strong hug and a cup of coffee. "Aunt Brenda, you're a legend. I couldn't sleep last night thinking about your case. Did you bring everything?" I took out the manila envelope with the deeds, the notebook with the receipts, the USB drive with the recordings, and the photos from the old phone from my bag. Jessica spread everything out on her desk like a detective building a case. "This is it, Aunt Brenda. This is perfect. You have impeccable documentation." She reviewed each paper with shining eyes. "Deeds in your name, proof of payment, bank transfers, even recordings." She plugged the USB into her computer and listened to a few snippets of the recordings. Her expression changed from professional to indignant. "Like having a free maid. When the old woman dies, she served her purpose." Jessica clenched her fists. "Aunt Brenda, with this we can do whatever you want. Immediate eviction, collection of back rent, compensation for moral damages. Tell me what you need, and we'll do it." "I need," I said slowly, "for them to understand what they lost, for them to feel what I felt, and for them to learn that love isn't free when you confuse it with servitude." Jessica nodded. "Then we're going to give them a lesson they won't forget." We spent 3 hours planning the strategy. Lawyers' letters, subpoenas, property appraisals, calculations of back rent based on the commercial value of the area. At 11 o'clock in the morning, Jessica sent the first official document, a legal summons. Mrs. Brenda Ann Cook, legal owner of the property located at 847 Oak Ridge Circle, requires the presence of Mr. Brian Paul Cook and Mrs. Stephanie Marie Cook at the offices of Notary Marcus Winters on Monday, March 18th at 10:00 a.m. to resolve matters of property and occupancy. Attendance is mandatory. Please present with official identification. The email was sent at 11:47 a.m. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Finally, at noon, I checked the messages from Brian. "Mom, please, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know the house was in your name. I never meant to disrespect you. The kids are asking for you. Tyler is crying. Emma doesn't understand what happened. Mom, you're my mom. We can't end like this." From Stephanie. "Mother-in-law, I think this is all getting out of proportion. If you were bothered by last night's message, I apologize. It was a misunderstanding. Brian is very upset. The kids are too. Please reconsider. Can't we talk like civilized adults?" I noticed the change in tone, from bossy mother-in-law to pleading mother-in-law. But I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Facebook. My post had 243 reactions, 189 comments. I started reading them. "Brenda, I didn't know you were going through this. I always saw you as such a strong woman. I'm glad you found your voice." Rosa, my old neighbor. "My friend, I've been living with my son and his wife for 2 years. I identify so much with this. You made me cry. Thank you for sharing. Patricia from the book club. My mom went through something similar. She ended up in the hospital from stress. I wish she'd had your courage. A cousin I hadn't seen in years. This hit me hard. All older women deserve respect, not crumbs. Mrs. Guadalupe, a childhood friend." And so they continued. Comment after comment from women sharing their own stories. Women living with their children, being treated as unpaid caregivers. Women who had lost their homes, their savings, their dignity. My little post had become a refuge for silenced voices. At 3:00 in the afternoon, my sister called. "Brenda, what's going on? Brian called me crying. He says you left the house." "I left my house," I corrected, "where I was living as a domestic servant." "But he's your son. It's family." "Family doesn't humiliate, Susan. Family doesn't make you feel invisible. Family doesn't send you mocking texts about heating up leftovers while they celebrate without you." Silence on the other end. "They did that?" I told her everything, every detail of the last 3 years. When I finished, my sister was crying. "Forgive me," she said. "I thought you were happy there. I thought it was a good arrangement." Everyone thought that because I smiled and didn't complain. But smiling doesn't mean you're happy. At 5:00 in the evening, my brother-in-law, Susan's husband, called Brian. He didn't answer. He left a message that Brian later showed me. "Nephew, you made a grave mistake. Your mother is a woman of honor, and you treated her like a doormat. Now you pay the consequences and learn your lesson." The cracks were starting to show. The family, which always assumes the children are right, was beginning to question. At 7:00 in the evening, Helen's phone rang. It was the next-door neighbor from our old community. "Mrs. Cook, I just wanted to tell you that everyone in Oak Ridge Heights knows what happened, and you are completely right. I saw you every day taking out the trash, washing their car, buying groceries, and they never even thanked you." "How did they find out?" I asked, surprised at how quickly news had traveled. "Stephanie went to the store this afternoon. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and when Mrs. Carmela asked her what was wrong, she exploded. She blamed you for everything, that you were ungrateful, that you left them on the street, that you were being selfish." I felt my blood boil. "And what did the neighbors say?" The woman laughed. "Mrs. Carmela told her that you were the owner of the house and had every right to leave whenever you wanted, that she would have done the same thing. and the other ladies said worse things. Stephanie ran back home. For the first time in 3 years, the neighbors who silently watched my suffering raised their voices. That night, before going to sleep, I checked Facebook again. My post had 420 reactions, 352 comments, and something more. 23 women had sent me private messages telling me their stories. Stories of mistreated mothers-in-law, of forgotten mothers, of exploited grandmothers. One woman wrote, "Brenda, thank you for speaking up. You gave me the courage to leave my daughter's house. I'm looking for an apartment tomorrow." Another said, "I've been taking care of my grandkids for free for 5 years while my daughter-in-law goes out to have fun. After reading your story, tomorrow I will tell her she can't keep taking advantage of me." My story, my pain, my broken silence was giving other women the strength to find their voice. And that, more than any house or deed or money, filled my heart. Because it turns out my revenge wasn't just personal. It was collective. Brian texted me at 11 o'clock at night. "Mom, we received the lawyer's summons. Please don't do this. We're family." For the first time in 48 hours, I replied, "Family is what you build with respect, son, not with blood and obligations. See you on Monday at the notary's office." And I turned off my phone because the storm was just beginning, and I, for the first time in years, was the lightning. Sunday was the longest day of my life. Brian showed up at Helen's house at 9 o'clock in the morning. He rang the doorbell insistently until my friend opened the door. "You can't see her," Helen said firmly, blocking the entrance. "She's my mother, ma'am. Please." She's a woman who is finally resting after 3 years of exploitation, and I'm not going to let you disturb her. But I heard the voices from upstairs. I came down the stairs slowly. Brian looked terrible. Deep, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, the same wrinkled shirt from Friday. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. "Mom," his voice broke when he saw me. "Brian, please, we need to talk." Helen looked at me. I nodded. "It's okay. Let him in." We sat in Helen's small living room. She stayed nearby, a silent guardian. Brian didn't know where to start. He ran his hands through his hair. He bit his lips. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know the house was in your name." "I know. Why did you never tell me?" That question. That damned question. "I did tell you, Brian. For the first 6 months, I reminded you every 2 weeks. Son, we need to go to the notary to do the transfer. Do you remember what you'd say?" He looked down. "Later, Mom. We're really busy with the move right now. Next week, Mom. There's no rush, Mom. We're family after all." And then you stopped responding, and I stopped asking, because a part of me, the wise part that survived 42 years of marriage, knew I would need that protection. "Protection from me? Your own son?" "From the situation," I corrected. "From becoming what I became, a domestic servant in my own house." Brian covered his face with his hands. "I never wanted you to feel that way. But I did feel that way, every day for 3 years. Stephanie. She can be harsh sometimes, but she's not a bad person. Brian, do you know how much your mother invested in that house?" He swallowed hard. "The deeds say $136,800. "Exactly. Do you know where that money came from?" From the sale of the house in the suburbs. From the sale of the house where your father and I lived for 42 years, where we raised you, where we celebrated every one of your birthdays, where your father died in my bed holding my hand." My voice cracked. "I sold my memories, Brian. I sold the last piece of your father I had left, and I did it for you." Brian started to cry. Thick tears fell onto his hands. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Do you know how much you paid for the mortgage each month?" $480. And do you know what the actual mortgage payment was? Silence. $1,400. I paid the other $920 every month from my 1,600 pension. Do you know what that means? He looked up, confused. It means that after paying my share of the house, I had $680 a month left for all my expenses. Clothes, medicine, transportation, anything personal. $680 while Stephanie was spending $300 on a single bottle of wine. Brian turned pale. I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed I was fine, that I was happy, that taking care of your kids and cleaning your house was enough purpose for me. Mom, I stood up and went to my purse. I took out the hardcover notebook. I placed it on the coffee table. Open it. With trembling hands, Brian opened the notebook and began to read. Page after page of taped receipts, proof of transfers, notes in my handwriting. Refrigerator $1,890, washer and dryer $2,150, complete living room set $3,200, master bathroom remodel $6,500, TV for living room $2,200. His voice was a whisper. My God. Keep reading. He reached the final pages, the monthly calculations, 36 months of contributions, the final total. Over $130,000, he whispered. And that's not counting, I added coldly, the 3 meals a day I cooked, the cleaning, the childcare, the laundry, the ironing. If we put a price on all that work at the rate of a live-in domestic worker, that's another $40,000 approximately. Brian closed the notebook. He was trembling. I don't have $130,000 to pay you. I know. I don't even have $20,000 in savings. I know that too. So what do you want? The house? Are you going to kick us out onto the street? And there it was, the $1,000,000 question. I took a deep breath. I want, I said slowly, you to understand what you lost. It wasn't just a house. It wasn't just furniture or money. You lost your mother. You lost me. I haven't lost you. You're right here. When was the last time you asked me how I was, how I slept, if my back hurt from cleaning so much, if I missed your father, if I felt lonely? Silence. When was the last time you hugged me without it being in passing, that you sat down with me for coffee, that you really looked me in the eyes? More silence. I became a service, Brian, not your mother, and you let it happen. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know, but sorry doesn't give me back 3 years of my life. It doesn't give me back my dignity. I then took the USB drive out of my pocket. I placed it on the table next to the notebook. What is that? He asked, wiping his tears. Listen to it when you get home, but do it alone. Stephanie can't be there. Why? Because if you listen to it together, you'll end up getting a divorce tonight. And even though your wife made my life impossible, your children don't deserve a broken home. Brian picked up the USB drive as if it were a bomb. Mom, what's on here? The truth. 17 recordings of conversations where Stephanie talks about me when she thinks I'm not listening, where she plans how to get rid of me, where she makes fun of me with her friends. I saw his face crumble. Listen to it. All of it. And then you decide if you want us to meet at the notary's office tomorrow with your wife present, or if you'd rather we talk just the two of us first. He stood up, staggering a bit. He grabbed the USB drive and the notebook. Mom, Monday at 10:00 sharp, Brian, at Notary Winter's office. You decide who comes with you. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Yes, I said. You can learn, you can change, and you can teach your children that elderly people are not furniture, that your mother was not a servant, that love and respect are not optional in a family. He left without another word. Helen sat next to me and held me as I cried. "Did you do the right thing?" she asked softly. "I don't know, but I did what was necessary." That afternoon, Tyler came to Helen's house alone. He rang the doorbell, and when I opened it, he threw himself into my arms, crying. "Grandma, I miss you so much." I held him tight, breathing in the smell of his hair. My grandson, my beloved grandson, who was not to blame for any of this. "I miss you too, my love." "Why did you leave?" I knelt to be at his level. Because sometimes when someone treats you badly for a long time, you have to walk away to remind them that you're important. "But we don't treat you badly." "I know, sweetie. You guys love me, but your parents forgot how to treat me right." "Dad is really sad, and Mom won't stop crying." "I know." "Are you coming back?" I looked into his eyes, those 9-year-old eyes full of confusion and innocence. "I don't know, Tyler. But what I do know is that I love you, and that none of this is your fault. Do you understand?" He nodded, wiping his tears with the cuff of his sweater. We spent 2 hours together. We ate cookies. I read him a story. We played dominoes like we used to. When Brian came to pick him up, my son's face was devastated. "Did you listen to it?" I asked from the doorway. He nodded without speaking. "All of it?" He nodded again. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." I didn't sleep well that night, because I knew the next day would define everything. Because tomorrow in that notary's office, it wouldn't just be the fate of a house that would be decided. It would be decided if a broken family could heal, or if some fractures are too deep to repair. On Monday at 9:30 in the morning, I arrived at Notary Marcus Winters's office. Jessica accompanied me, her leather briefcase full of documents. She looked like a movie lawyer. Black pantsuit, heels, hair tied back in a perfect bun. "Ready, Aunt Brenda?" she asked as we climbed the stairs of the colonial building downtown. "Ready." Marcus welcomed us into his office with its high ceilings and old mahogany furniture. It smelled of old books and coffee. "Mrs. Cook," he greeted me with a fatherly hug. "I'm so sorry things have come to this." "Me too, my friend. But here we are." We sat down. The clock read 9:47. At 9:52, we heard footsteps on the stairs. The door opened. Brian came in first. He was wearing a gray suit, a dark tie, as if he were going to a funeral. His eyes were sunken red from lack of sleep. And behind him came Stephanie, but not the confident, arrogant Stephanie I was used to. This Stephanie was wearing a conservative navy blue dress. No cleavage, no stilettos, low heels, little makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like a scolded child. She saw me and immediately looked away. Interesting. "Good morning," Brian said in a hoarse voice. "Good morning," I replied. They sat on the other side of the table, Marcus at the head. Jessica took documents out of her briefcase with precise professional movements. "All right," Marcus began, putting on his glasses. "We are here to resolve a situation of property and occupancy. Mrs. Brenda Ann Cook is the legal owner of the property located at—" "We know," Stephanie interrupted. Her voice was tense. "We already know everything." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you do? Do you know that my client has invested $136,800 in that property?" "Yes." "And that you have technically been living without a lease for 3 years?" "Yes." "And that my client has the legal right to request immediate eviction, collect back rent, and sue for moral damages?" At that, Stephanie looked up. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Yes, we know. We know everything." The silence that followed was thick. Brian cleared his throat. "Mom, I listened to the recordings. All of them." His voice cracked. "All 17. It took me 4 hours, and each one destroyed me a little more." Stephanie closed her eyes. "I didn't know," Brian continued, looking directly at me. "I had no idea about the things Stephanie was saying about you behind your back." "Brian?" Stephanie mumbled. "No." He cut her off with a harshness I had never heard from him. "You are not going to minimize this. Not now." He turned back to me. "Mom, I heard how she talked about you with her friends. How she made fun of you. How she planned—" He ran his hands over his face. "How she planned to convince me to send you to a nursing home when you were no longer useful." Stephanie sobbed. "No, I didn't mean it. It was frustration. You didn't mean it?" Brian's voice rose. "There's a recording from October where you tell your sister, and I quote, 'As soon as the old woman gets sick or starts with dementia, we'll send her to a cheap nursing home and keep the whole house.' You didn't mean that either?" Stephanie's face crumpled. Jessica, smelling blood in the water, took out her laptop. "Would you like to listen to the recordings here in the presence of the notary? I have certified copies." "No," Stephanie said quickly. "That's not necessary." "Oh, I think it is," Jessica said with a shark-like smile. "Because my client not only has recordings, she also has witness statements from neighbors about the treatment she received, photographs of humiliating messages, and a detailed record of psychological abuse and financial exploitation." Stephanie turned completely pale. "Financial exploitation," Jessica repeated, "is a crime, especially when it involves senior citizens. We could not only win the house, Mrs. Cook. We could take this to criminal court." "No!" Stephanie stood up abruptly. "Please, that's not necessary. I'll do whatever it takes." "Sit down," Brian ordered. Stephanie collapsed back into her chair, trembling. Marcus, who had observed everything in silence, spoke in a grave voice. "Mrs. Stephanie, I have known Mrs. Brenda for 30 years. She is a woman of honor, and you, forgive my frankness, treated her like dirt." Stephanie buried her face in her hands. "I know," she moaned. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You're sorry?" I finally asked. My voice came out colder than I expected. "Are you sorry you humiliated me, or are you sorry you got caught?" She looked up. Mascara was running down her cheeks. "I'm sorry for both. I'm sorry I was cruel. I'm sorry I treated you like a servant. And I'm sorry I was exposed like this because it forced me to see the monster I became. That surprised me. I expected excuses, justifications, not self-criticism. Stephanie continued, wiping her tears with trembling hands. "I grew up poor, Mrs. Cook. Very poor. My mother worked as a maid her whole life, and when I managed to get out of that poverty, when I got my career and my position, I think I became exactly what I hated most. The employers who treated my mother badly." Her voice broke completely. "And the worst part is I did it to you, to the woman who helped us get a house, who took care of my children, who gave me a home. I was the worst version of myself with you." Brian looked at her with a mixture of pain and disappointment. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you treat her like that, if you knew how your own mother felt?" "Because I was afraid," Stephanie admitted between sobs. "Afraid the kids would love you more. Afraid Brian would see that you were a better mother, a better cook, better at everything. Afraid of being seen as the useless daughter-in-law who needs her mother-in-law to keep her house running." She closed her eyes. "So I treated you badly to feel superior, to remind myself that I was the lady of the house, the one in charge, the successful one. And you, You were just the mother-in-law living with us. She turned to me, her eyes red and swollen. But it wasn't my house. It was your house, the one you paid for, the one you built. And I was so stupid, so blind, so cruel that I didn't see it until you left. Jessica looked at me, waiting for my signal. I knew she wanted to destroy Stephanie legally. She had all the elements to do it. But something in Stephanie's confession, in her broken voice, made me pause. "Does your mother know how you treated me?" I asked. Stephanie shook her head. "If she found out, she would disown me. She adores grandmothers. She always told me, 'Treat your mother-in-law how you would want your own mother to be treated.'" "Wise advice," I said coldly. "Too bad you didn't listen." "I know." Marcus drummed his fingers on his desk. "Well, we need to resolve the practical situation. Mrs. Brenda has 3 legal options." Jessica spread documents on the table. Option 1, immediate eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the property. Mrs. Cook gets her house back. Stephanie paled. Option 2, full purchase. You pay Mrs. Cook $136,800 within a period not exceeding 90 days. The deed is transferred. The house becomes legally yours. Brian shook his head. "We don't have that kind of money, not even close." Option 3, Jessica said and looked at me. This was my idea, the one we had discussed. Property division and cohabitation agreement. "What does that mean?" Brian asked. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. "It means we legally divide the house. I get 60% of the property. You get 40% registered with the notary with all the legal force." "But," Stephanie frowned, confused. 60-40, that means— "It means the house will still be more in my name than yours, but you will have something. You won't be on the street." "And where would you live?" Brian asked. "I'm not going back to that house," I said firmly. "I'm staying where I am, but my 60% comes with conditions." Jessica unfolded another document. "Mrs. Cook will rent her percentage of the house to a family she personally selects. Tenants who will live in the house with you. You will share common spaces. They will pay a monthly rent of $850 that will go directly to Mrs. Cook." Stephanie's eyes widened. You want us to live with strangers?" "I want you to learn how it feels to share your space with someone you didn't choose," I replied. "I want you to understand the discomfort, the lack of privacy, having to be nice to people who are in your house." Brian understood immediately, like how you felt with us. "Exactly. And the other condition?" he asked. "Family therapy," I said. "Brian, you and I will go to therapy once a week for 6 months. I'll pay for the first 10 sessions. You pay for the rest, without Stephanie, just the 2 of us." My son had tears in his eyes. "You would do that? After everything, you would still want to fix our relationship?" "You're my son," I said, my voice trembling. "You made terrible mistakes. You failed me, but you're my son, and I'm not going to give up on you without trying." Brian stood up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of me. "Forgive me, Mom. Please forgive me." I held him and cried with him. Stephanie watched from her chair, destroyed. "And me?" she asked in a small voice. "Is there anything I can do to earn your forgiveness?" I looked at her directly. "You can start by treating the tenants I'm going to put in your house well. You can start by valuing what you have. And you can start by teaching my grandchildren that respect is not optional." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I will. I promise you." Marcus prepared the documents. Property division 60-40, lease agreement for my portion, protection clauses. Everything legal, everything sealed. When we left that office 2 hours later, I was free. And they had a lesson that would last for years. Because sometimes justice isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making you live with the consequences of your actions every single day. 2 weeks after that meeting at the notary's office, I was sitting in a cafe downtown with Rebecca Thompson, a 52-year-old widowed elementary school teacher. She had 2 children, Jason, 14, and Sophia, 11. She had been looking for a place for 3 years after her husband died in a car accident, and she had to sell their condo to pay medical debts. "Mrs. Cook," Rebecca said with hopeful eyes, "are you sure you want to rent us part of your house? With 2 teenagers, we make a lot of noise." "I'm completely sure," I replied, sipping my coffee. "And please call me Brenda." I explained the situation. Everything. I didn't lie or omit details. Rebecca needed to know what she was getting into. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "So," she said finally, "you want my family and me to be your living lesson for your son and daughter-in-law?" "I want," I corrected, "you to have a decent home, and yes, for my relatives to learn some empathy along the way." Rebecca smiled. "Sounds fair. When can we move in?" A week later, on April 1st, the moving truck arrived at 847 Oak Ridge Circle. I went to supervise. It was my right as a co-owner. Stephanie opened the door. When she saw me, her face went through 10 different emotions, but she forced a smile. "Mother-in-law, come in." "Brenda," I corrected. "Call me Brenda." "Brenda," she repeated, swallowing hard. Behind me were Rebecca, Jason, and Sophia. The kids looked at the house with wide eyes. "It's huge," Sophia murmured. "It's nice," Jason agreed. Brian appeared from the kitchen. He looked better than at the notary's office, but he still carried guilt in his eyes. "Mom," he greeted me. Then he looked at Rebecca. "You must be Mrs. Thompson." "Rebecca is fine," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for having us." "We didn't have a choice," Stephanie muttered, so quietly it was almost inaudible. Almost. I looked at her pointedly. She looked down. "I'm sorry. That was an unnecessary comment. Welcome to the house." I showed them the rooms that were assigned to them according to the agreement. A large bedroom for Rebecca, a smaller one for Jason, and Sophia would share with Emma by the girl's own decision. "I really get to share with someone," Emma had said when we proposed it. "I've always wanted a sister." The kitchen, living room, and dining room would be shared spaces. That's where things got interesting. That first night, Rebecca made dinner, green chicken enchiladas. The smell filled the house. Stephanie came downstairs looking confused. "What's that smell?" "Dinner," Rebecca said cheerfully. "I made extra if you'd like to join us." I saw Stephanie's face, that look of "this is my kitchen," of "I didn't invite you to cook here." But she bit her tongue because she knew it wasn't just her kitchen anymore. "Thank you," she said with effort. "It sounds delicious." They all ate together. Brian, Stephanie, Tyler, Emma, Rebecca, Jason, and Sophia. A full table of strangers learning to live together. Tyler and Jason bonded over video games. Emma and Sophia became inseparable in 30 minutes. Children don't have adult prejudices. But Stephanie picked at her food in silence, uncomfortable at her own table. And I, sitting at Helen's house 2 miles away, imagined the scene with a smile. My revenge wasn't kicking them out onto the street. My revenge was making them understand exactly how it felt to be me. The weeks passed. Brian and I started therapy. The first day was devastating. We both cried for the entire session. "I let her get lost," he told the therapist. "I let our bond break because it was easier to keep the peace with Stephanie than to defend you." "And I let it happen," I admitted, "because I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid that if I protested, they would kick me out and I'd have nowhere to go." The therapist, Dr. Anderson, looked at us with compassion. "Fear makes us allow intolerable things," she said. "But you two still have a chance to rebuild." And slowly, session by session, we began to do just that. Brian started calling me, not just for matters about the house or the agreement. He called to ask how I was, what I had eaten, if I had slept well. Simple things he hadn't done in 3 years. One day he showed up at Helen's house with flowers. "Just because," he said, "because you're my mom, and I love you." I cried holding those flowers all afternoon. Meanwhile, at the house in Oak Ridge Heights, cohabitation created revealing situations. Rebecca told me everything in our weekly calls. Yesterday, Stephanie got upset because Jason used too much hot water in his shower, Rebecca told me, laughing. I politely reminded her that we pay our rent on time and are entitled to hot water. She turned red but didn't say anything else. And Brian? Brian is kind. He helps. On Saturday, he played soccer with Jason and Tyler in the yard. I think he's learning. There were also beautiful moments. Sophia was having trouble with math. Stephanie, who was an engineer by training, helped her with her homework without anyone asking. "Thank you, Mrs. Stephanie," Sophia had said with a smile. And Stephanie, Rebecca told me, started crying afterward because for the first time in months, someone had sincerely thanked her for something. The children, of course, were the easy part of this whole equation. Emma had a new best friend. Tyler had an older brother figure who taught him bike tricks. And both, in their childhood innocence, were rebuilding bridges that the adults had burned. One Sunday, a month after the move, Brian invited me over for lunch. "At the house," he said. "Rebecca is making mole. She says it's your favorite." I hesitated. "Mom," Brian pleaded, "please. The kids miss you, and I need you to see that I'm trying." I went. I entered that house with my heart pounding. I hadn't been there since the night I left. Everything looked the same, but different. There were Sophia's drawings on the fridge, Jason's bike on the porch, more voices, more life. "Grandma!" Emma ran to hug me. "You came?" Tyler hugged me too, taller than I remembered. "I missed you, Grandma." Rebecca greeted me with a hug. "Come in, Brenda. Your house? Your table?" Stephanie was in the kitchen. She saw me and nervously wiped her hands on her apron. "Brenda," she said, "thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting me." We looked at each other. 2 women who had been at war. 2 women who were not yet friends, but who were learning to coexist. "The mole smells delicious," I said. "Rebecca taught me her recipe," Stephanie admitted. "It's better than mine." It was the first time I heard her admit that someone did something better than her. We all sat down to eat. 8 people around one table. Jason told a joke. Sophia sang a song she learned in school. Tyler showed off his grades. Emma showed a drawing she made of her new big family. We were all in the drawing. Rebecca, her kids, Brian, Stephanie, their kids, and me in the center with a crown drawn on my head. "You're the queen, Grandma," Emma explained, "because you made us all be together." I broke down. I cried in front of everyone. Brian took my hand. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on us." "Thank you," I whispered, "for finally seeing me again." After lunch, Stephanie asked to speak with me alone. We went out to the small backyard, the same one where I used to hang the laundry. "Brenda," she began in a trembling voice, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you in unforgivable ways, but I want you to know that I'm in therapy, individual therapy, working on my insecurities, my need for control, everything. I'm glad," I said sincerely. "Rebecca is teaching me a lot," she continued, "about humility, about gratitude. She lost her husband. She lost her house, and she still smiles every day. She's grateful for what she has. And I had everything, and I never stopped complaining." She wiped away a tear. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to let me try to be better, to see that I'm trying. I looked at her, this woman who had made me invisible, who had planned to get rid of me, who had humiliated me for 3 years. But I also saw a broken woman trying to put herself back together. Forgiveness, I told her, isn't asked for. It's earned. With actions, with time, with real change. I know, and I'm willing to see if you can achieve it. Her face lit up with hope. Really? Really? But Stephanie, if you ever treat anyone in that house badly again, if you ever go back to being the cruel person you were with me, this agreement is over. Understood? Understood. Completely understood. As I left that house that day, something had changed. Not everything was fixed, not everything was forgiven, but something had begun to heal. And that was more than I had dared to hope for when I left with my suitcase that night. Sometimes, the bravest thing isn't walking away. It's coming back on your own terms. 6 months passed, and the situation at 847 Oak Ridge Circle evolved in ways I never expected. What began as a lesson in humility turned into something closer to healing. Rebecca Thompson and her children became more than tenants. They became the catalyst for change. Like a stone dropped in still water, their presence created ripples that transformed everyone in that house. I visited once a week now, usually for Sunday lunch. Each time I noticed something different, small changes that spoke volumes. The first time Stephanie asked Rebecca for advice on a recipe instead of pretending to know everything. The day Brian organized a barbecue and made sure everyone had a role, treating Rebecca not as a tenant, but as an equal partner in the household. The afternoon I arrived to find Jason helping Tyler with his science project while Stephanie watched, nodding appreciatively instead of interfering. The dynamic has completely changed, Rebecca told me during one of our coffee dates downtown. You should have seen what happened last week. What? I asked, genuinely curious. The washing machine broke down, water everywhere, a complete disaster. She smiled. And do you know what Stephanie did? She didn't blame anyone. She didn't complain. She just rolled up her sleeves and started mopping while Brian called the repair service. Then she suggested we all go to the laundromat together and make an adventure out of it. Stephanie? The same woman who once criticized me for using too much detergent? Rebecca nodded. The very same. She bought everyone ice cream afterward and joked about how sometimes disasters bring people together. She paused. She's changing, Brenda. Slowly but surely. But the most significant changes were happening between the children. Emma and Sophia had become inseparable. They did homework together, shared clothes, and had endless sleepovers despite living in the same room. Tyler looked up to Jason like the big brother he never had. They played basketball in the driveway, rode bikes around the neighborhood, shared video games. Mom, Jason taught me how to fix my bike chain, Tyler told me during one visit, his face beaming with pride. He says I'm a natural mechanic. These children, untainted by adult prejudices, were showing their parents how simple human connection could be. Of course, there were still rough edges. Stephanie struggled with sharing what she considered her space. There was the time she snapped at Jason for leaving his shoes in the entryway, or the evening she made a passive-aggressive comment about the noise level when Sophia was practicing her violin. But what made the difference was how these conflicts were resolved. Rebecca never backed down, but she never escalated either. I understand this is difficult, she would say calmly, but we're paying rent to live here. We have rights too. And Brian, to his credit, would step in when needed. Steph, he'd say gently, remember our agreement. Remember why they're here. The most surprising transformation, however, was in Stephanie herself. The woman who once treated me like an invisible servant was discovering what it meant to be seen as a human being with flaws rather than the perfect, controlling homemaker she pretended to be. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Rebecca found Stephanie crying in the kitchen. She'd made a mistake at work, a serious one that might cost her the promotion she'd worked so hard for. "I feel like such a failure," Stephanie admitted. "Everything I thought made me valuable. My job, my perfect house, my perfect family image. It's all an illusion." Instead of gloating or dismissing her, Rebecca sat with her, made her tea, listened, and then said something that Stephanie later told me changed everything for her. "Your value isn't in what you accomplish or how your house looks. It's in how you treat people, especially those who can't do anything for you in return." It was a lesson I'd tried to teach her for 3 years, but sometimes the teacher matters as much as the lesson. Meanwhile, Brian and I continued our weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Anderson. They weren't easy. We uncovered layers of resentment, misunderstanding, and grief that went back years, even before Paul died. "I felt like I could never live up to Dad," Brian admitted during one particularly difficult session. "He was this larger-than-life figure, perfect husband, perfect provider. And then when he died and you came to live with us, I think I was afraid of failing you the way I always felt I failed him." "Oh, Brian." I reached for his hand across the space between our chairs. "Your father was so proud of you. He wasn't perfect. No one is. And you never failed either of us." "But I did fail you, Mom. I let Stephanie treat you like you weren't my mother, like you weren't the woman who raised me." Dr. Anderson leaned forward. "Brian, what do you think you were afraid would happen if you confronted Stephanie about her treatment of your mother?" He thought for a long moment. That she'd leave. That the kids would suffer through a divorce. That I'd end up alone. His voice broke. "I was a coward." "No," I said firmly. "You were trapped between loyalties. But now you get to choose who you want to be going forward." Little by little, session by session, my son and I rebuilt what had been broken. Not to what it was before. That was impossible. But to something new. Something honest. Something stronger. One Tuesday afternoon in late August, I was sitting in Helen's garden when my phone rang. It was Stephanie. Despite our improved relationship, she rarely called me directly, preferring to communicate through Brian or during my visits. "Brenda?" Her voice sounded hesitant. "Do you have a moment to talk?" "Of course, Stephanie. Is everything all right?" "Yes. No. She took a deep breath. "I'd like to meet with you. Just the two of us. There's something I need to discuss. Something important." We arranged to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes the following day. I spent the night wondering what she could possibly want. Was she going to complain about Rebecca? Ask for a reduction in rent? Announce they were moving out? When I arrived at the cafe, Stephanie was already there, sitting at a corner table, a leather portfolio in front of her. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, a far cry from the power suits and designer clothes she used to flaunt. She looked nervous, tapping her fingers on the tabletop, checking her watch. "Stephanie," I greeted her, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming, Brenda." She attempted a smile. "I ordered you a cinnamon latte. I remember it's your favorite." I was touched by this small gesture. "Thank you." After a moment of awkward silence, she opened the portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. "I've been thinking a lot about our situation. About the house. About what happened. About everything." I waited, curious. "The past 6 months with Rebecca and her kids. It's been eye-opening, humbling, sometimes difficult, but also," she searched for the right word, "healing." She slid the papers across to me. "I want to make things right. I've been saving and I spoke with the bank. I can get a loan. I looked down at the documents. It was an offer to buy my 60% share of the house over 5 years with monthly payments of $2,300, all calculated with fair interest, all laid out clearly. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. It's your house, your investment, your sacrifice. And we've been living off your generosity for too long. I thought you wanted to keep the house for free, I said with an ironic smile. The Stephanie from a year ago did, she admitted, looking me directly in the eyes. Today Stephanie wants to earn things, wants to pay what she owes, wants to sleep without guilt. I studied the numbers. It was a fair offer, very fair. And Rebecca and her kids? I asked. We offered to let them stay as our official tenants if you agree to sell. With a real contract, fair rent. They accepted. She smiled slightly. The kids are inseparable. And Rebecca? Rebecca has become my friend, my external conscience. I was silent for a long moment, turning the pages, considering the implications. Okay, I said finally. I accept. Stephanie exhaled, relief washing over her face. Thank you for giving me this chance, for not destroying us when you could have. I gain nothing by destroying you, Stephanie, I said quietly. I gain by seeing my family heal. As we finished our coffee, Stephanie hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped package. This is for you, she said, pushing it across the table. I've been meaning to give it to you for a while. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a silver frame. But it wasn't the frame that made my breath catch. It was the photograph inside. It showed our entire extended family at Christmas, before Paul got sick. Brian and Stephanie, much younger, the children still babies. Paul with his arm around me, his smile so bright it hurt to look at. And there I was, in the center of it all, visibly part of the family. I found it when we were cleaning out the attic, Stephanie explained. I thought you should have it. I traced Paul's face with my finger, tears welling in my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. This means more than you know. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Stephanie surprised me with a brief, awkward hug. See you on Sunday for lunch? She asked. I'll bring dessert, I promised. Walking back to Helen's house, clutching the photograph to my chest, I realized something profound. Revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but healing, true healing, was infinitely more valuable. The following weekend, I helped Rebecca and the children prepare a special dinner. It was the 6-month anniversary of their moving into the house, and we wanted to celebrate the unusual family they had created. Grandma, is this enough parsley? Emma asked, showing me a handful of chopped herbs. Perfect, sweetheart. Just sprinkle it over the potatoes like I showed you. Tyler and Jason were setting the table, arguing good-naturedly about the correct placement of the forks. Sophia was arranging flowers in a vase, her face screwed up in concentration. When Brian and Stephanie arrived home from work, their surprise was genuine. The dining room had been transformed with candles, flowers, and a hand-painted banner that read, Our Blended Family, 6 months strong. What's all this? Brian asked, his eyes wide. A celebration, Rebecca explained, bringing out a steaming casserole. Of new beginnings, second chances, and the family we've created. Over dinner, stories flowed. Jason talked about the basketball team Brian had helped him join. Sophia proudly described how Stephanie had taught her to make spreadsheets for her school project. Emma and Tyler argued over who had the idea first to create a family newsletter, which they had actually produced, with crayon illustrations and handwritten articles about household news. Watching them, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the exhausted resignation I had mistaken for peace during those 3 years of servitude, but genuine, soul-deep tranquility. Later, as we shared dessert, a triple chocolate cake that Helen had helped me bake, Brian stood up and clinked his glass with a spoon. "I want to propose a toast," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "To second chances, to forgiveness, to learning from mistakes." He looked directly at me. "And to my mother, who taught me the hardest and most important lesson of my life, that love without respect isn't love at all." Everyone raised their glasses, even the children with their juice. "To Brenda," they chorused. I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, back at Helen's house, I sat on the edge of my bed and let the tears flow freely. They weren't tears of sadness or even joy. They were tears of release, of letting go, of finally being seen. Today, a year and 3 months after that night, I left with my suitcase. I'm sitting in my small rented apartment in downtown Coyoacán. I'm 69 years old. I teach knitting classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the community center. I go to therapy once a month for myself. I go for walks with Helen every morning. Brian comes to visit me every Sunday. Sometimes he brings the kids. Sometimes he comes alone and we cook together, like when he was a boy. Stephanie sends me texts every now and then, pictures of the kids, recipes she's tried, small gestures that show she's trying. The $850 in rent I received each month from Rebecca, plus the $2,300 from Stephanie's payment plan, allow me to live with dignity, with independence, with peace. Did I get my family back? Not completely. Some wounds left permanent scars. But I got something more important back. I got myself back. I got my name back, my voice, my right to be treated with respect. Last week, Emma gave me a new drawing. It was me standing in front of a house with a suitcase in my hand and a smile on my face. Underneath, she wrote in uneven letters, "My Grandma Brenda, the bravest woman I know, because she knew when to leave and when she was ready to come back." I have it framed in my living room, because that 7-year-old girl understood what many adults never do. Staying where you're hurt isn't love. It's habit. And breaking that habit, even if it hurts, even if it's scary, even if it makes you feel selfish, is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. Rebecca and her children still live in the house. She and I have become close friends. Her kids call me Aunt Brenda. Last month, she started dating again, a kind math teacher from her school. She invited me to have coffee with them, wanting my approval. I gave it wholeheartedly. Stephanie and Brian are in a better place, too. They still have their struggles. What couple doesn't? But they're learning to communicate honestly. Stephanie was eventually promoted again at work, and this time when they celebrated, I was seated at the head of the table. As for me, I've discovered something surprising about getting older. It can be a time of unexpected rebirth. I joined a book club. I started taking painting classes. I even went on a weekend trip to the coast with Helen and 2 other widows from our apartment building. We laughed until our sides hurt, stayed up too late drinking wine, and watched the sunrise from the beach. Paul would have been proud. "Take care of yourself, Brenda," he'd said. And finally, I am. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm in the park in Coyoacán with Tyler and Emma. We bought corn ice cream and sat under a tree. "Grandma," says Tyler, now 11 and with a voice that's starting to change, "do you regret leaving that night?" "Never," I answer without hesitation. "Not even a little bit." "Not even a little bit?" "Because leaving saved me. It reminded me who I was before I became invisible." Emma, with ice cream on her nose, asks, "And are you happy now?" I lift her onto my lap even though she's getting big. Now I'm happy because I'm where I choose to be, not where I'm tolerated. Brian shows up with coffee for me. He sits beside me. "The kids asked if we could do this every Sunday," he says. Park ice cream, time with Grandma. I'd love that. My son smiles. That sincere smile I hadn't seen in years. Mom, I know I say it a lot, but thank you for not giving up on us. For teaching us the hardest lesson we needed. You're welcome, son. Do you know what my therapist told me last week? What? She said what I did wasn't revenge. It was restorative justice. Because I made you face the consequences without destroying you. I gave you a chance to change. Your therapist is wise. We stay there under that tree, watching the kids run. And I think of all the women who wrote to me after my Facebook post. The ones who found the courage to leave. The ones who set boundaries. The ones who reclaimed their dignity. And I understand that my story was never just mine. It belonged to all of us. The invisible ones. The exploited ones. The ones who gave everything, hoping for crumbs of respect in return. Because true wealth isn't in what you own, it's in what you don't allow to be taken from you. And I, Brenda Ann Cook, widow of Paul James Cook, 69 years old, got my soul back. And no one will ever steal that from me again. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on self-worth, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to choose between staying where you're hurt or leaving to save yourself, like if this story reminded you that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. And subscribe to the channel, because here we will continue to share real-life stories of brave men and women who chose to respect themselves. Because at the end of the day, the most important lesson is this: love that doesn't include respect isn't love. It's habit, and habits that hurt you are meant to be broken.